After a 40-point loss to the Detroit Pistons, there's one thing that's evident for this team. The team isn't a rebuild, and the rebuild will be televised. We're going to talk about it all and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And yeah, man, the Chicago Bulls suck, and it's really unfortunate to say that, but this is by design, right? And I think that's the thing that all of us, myself included, need to remember is that it's by design that this team is going to lose basketball games. Now, the thing that was evident is that it's how they lost the game, right? This is a game in which the Chicago Bulls had no semblance of actual offense. And there are a couple of people that stood out in that you expect to actually be able to bring a little bit of identity to the Chicago Bulls, at least offensively, when we need it. And that's Nikola, Vucevic, and Coby White. And I want to talk a lot about those players and then talk about the rebuild and things like that. And also, let me start off with this, right? There has to be an understanding, and I think that it's my job in doing this that I always have to explain this. When people say, well, let's finally trade XYZ and start the rebuild has already started. I need everybody to realize that the rebuild has already started. Now, that doesn't mean jettisoning off everybody, right? The Bulls are not tanking. They're rebuilding, and rebuilding can happen over time. And I think people have crossed the notion of what is rebuilding, what's tanking, and what's blowing it all up. And they kind of mix that all together, right? The Bulls are probably never going to be a team that blow it all up all at once. They're just not going to be that. We've said that multiple times. That's not going to happen. For the people that are like, well, yeah, this is perfect time. Let's trade off Coby. Let's trade off Isle. Let's trade off Vucevic. Let's do all this and just everybody needs to go but Matas. You know how many people I've seen leave the comments that, oh, everybody's going to be gone but Matas? That's not how it's going to work. This is never going to be a team that jettisons off everybody all at once. Now, I've said it before. It could happen over time. It's already started happening over time. Look at it, right? When you look at it, we lost Alex Caruso. We lost Andre Drummond. We lost DeMar DeRozan. We lost Zach LaVine, right? That happened over time. You look back at it, and now this team is really completely different. Yes, they still have some of the same faces, some of them, but this team is hugely different already, right? And at the next offseason, I do expect the Bulls to look to move Nikola Vucevic. To maybe, depending on what position that they draft on, maybe it could be Coby, right? But I think when it comes down to it, like for people that are mixing in that you aren't in a rebuild until you tear everything out, that's not what's going to happen here. Now, again, it could happen over time, meaning that as we look 3 years from now, 4 years from now, we look back and so many faces are gone, much like it is for Coby White right now, right? Like you look back like that team slowly but surely all changed, and it was him and Zach were left from the last regime. Now Coby White's the last player left from the Gar-Pax era, right? So it's going to happen over time, make no mistake about it, but it's not going to be this thing to where you're going to see 15 trades over the course of the offseason, which it means all the faces are going to be different. That's not what you're going to get here. Now, with that said, though, there are two players in which, that sucked last night, and it's glaring. Coby White was terrible. 2 for 13 in a time where your team needed some scoring. It was terrible. And Ausar Thompson absolutely gave Coby White the business. And Coby White needs to look at himself in the mirror as a man coming into tonight's game and ask himself, is he going to stand up and fight back tonight because he didn't fight back last night? Like, Coby White had a terrible basketball game last night. Nikola Vucevic is also checked out, right? I hesitated in saying that before. I think there have been some matchup things, some things where we haven't necessarily gotten him the ball when he needed it the most and things like that. But Vooch at this point is just checked out. I don't know what else to say. He's checked out. He's that guy that's just he's looking around. He sees the air of change and he realizes, yeah, it's time for me to ride off into the sunset and hopefully go to bigger pastures, right? So that's what you're looking at there. But You need better from that. And that's the thing. It wasn't just the fact that the Bulls lost. It was how they lost. This team they had no offense at all. They had no actual structure at all, right? And that's something that's a concern, especially for a team that's trying to grow and develop guys the right way, right? And we got some comments from Billy Donovan that point to like, oh, well, I want guys to learn and structure and things like that. But it's like, is that what we're doing here? Now, is that what we're doing here, right? Now, this is an inconsistent Bulls team. It would not surprise many if the Chicago Bulls come out in tonight's game against the same team at their home court again against the Detroit Pistons, and they end up winning the game, right? Well, nobody would be surprised really by that because, again, this Bulls team is extremely, extremely bipolar. It just is what it is. That we're all over the place, right? So, that's what comes down to. But you need better from your vets. You need better from a coaching and execution standpoint, right? And I said this and opened it up that the rebuild will be televised because, listen, we're all going to be watching it. And I know a lot of Bulls fans, I'm done watching this team. And for some, that's going to be true. Make no mistake about it. For some, that will absolutely be true. But I think overall as well is that it comes down to, okay, even through rebuilding, right? You don't want to ruin talent. And that's what happens with some teams that completely tear things out. Like, for example, the Utah Jazz went through a rebuild. A lot of those players are still looking to move. The young players that they've drafted over time, they have more draft picks coming in. What if they really learned, right? I don't want to be that, right? I want to be a team with the Chicago Bulls that we get back to kind of how we were at the beginning of Kurt Heinrich, Ben Gordon, those guys were, yeah, you knew that the Bulls were a team that wasn't going to win a lot of games, right, initially at first, but you saw that team learning on the fly. You saw that team understanding, all right, this is how things fit together. This is how we compete against other teams. This is how we show some fight. This team has no fight in it at all. And that's just something that's really concerning as you're building a groundwork. And I put a lot of that on Billy Donovan. Now, make no mistake about it. This franchise has its issues from top to bottom, right? From ownership to the front office with AK and Eversley to Billy Donovan. That whatever issues, it's all played a part into the culture that we have here with Chicago. But you have a guy, a young stud in Matas Buzelis, right? Who, shout out to Ken Gill for saying that he's better than Cooper Flagg. That is a failed drug test, my boy. But with that said, like you look at this team and you have to start asking yourself, how many of these players are going to be here through this rebuild, right? Matas, we're going to give him the okay, right? Coby and Ayo, we don't know for sure just because they have contract extensions coming up. We got to see what's going to happen there. I know people hate it when I say it, but there is a 90% chance that Josh Giddey's coming back. The only 10% I'm leaving it is that some team offers him a crazy amount in restricted free agency with, I think at this point, the Bulls need to allow Josh Giddey to go through restricted free agency, meaning go and meet with other teams, let them set your price, sign an offer sheet, and then if you feel comfortable matching the offer sheet, you match the offer sheet. If some team is crazy enough to give you the reported $30 million that you want, again, I have my doubts that that's actually what he wants, but if he wants that $30 million and a team signs an offer sheet to that, may have to just let him go, right? But I think that what we're seeing, and this isn't, again, like people, anytime there's some people, that anytime some criticism or what they view as criticism of Josh Giddey comes down, they go into this, oh my God, you're hating on Josh Giddey. No, I'm just saying that Josh Giddey is a difficult player to really gauge what fair value is for him. It just is. And with the Bulls already having bad contracts, they don't want to, here's the thing. They don't want to do what they did with P. Will. They bid against themselves with P. Will and still lost. And I think when it comes to Josh Giddey is that he is a player that does have talent. His passing is advanced. His rebounding for a guard is advanced in the NBA. His scoring comes and goes. That's never really the biggest part of his game, but his scoring comes and goes. He was one of the few Bulls yesterday shot the ball 50% or better. So take that for what you will, right? But I do think when it comes to Josh Giddey, that the thing that may be the best for him is that you may have to just let him go and meet with other teams, let the market set the value, and then determine if that value that the market set is a value that you deem something that you can match. And that just is what it is. And while I know Reality A1 and some other rabid Josh Giddey fans are going to say, build around Giddey, you can't build around it. You cannot build a successful team around Josh Giddey. Now, you can build an offense around his skill set to make him be the engine that maybe make that thing go with his rebounding and his ability out in transition, his court vision, his passing, right? But Josh Giddey is not the level player. And here's the thing. Nobody on this team yet has shown themselves. That's why I said it's not a knock on Josh Giddey per se. There's been nobody on this team that has shown themselves to be good enough or consistent enough to be somebody that you can build around. Not even Matas Buzelis yet. Now, he's a rookie, has a lot of time hopefully left in front of him, but at the same time, like, he hasn't shown that either. So anybody who thinks that you could start building around anybody here right now, you can't. You just can't, right? It'd be different if Coby White was more consistent, especially with what he did last year and what he's shown flashes of this year. Hell, this was the first game in, I think, 6 games that he did not score at least 20 points. But there are going to be those huge inconsistencies from Coby, right? So you can't really build around Coby. Io's not the type of player you build around. He's a key piece and cog of a team, but I don't think he's a player that you can build around, right? Vooch is on his way out. We can't do that with Vooch anyway, even if we wanted to. And definitely Matas is too young. P. Will, hell no. Jalen Smith, what are you smoking? So, like, no, we don't have anybody that we can build around right now, right? We have players that we can develop, players that we're going to try to invest in, but nobody right now that you can build a team that you say, hey, by building around this guy, we're a surefire XYZ team, right? So that includes Josh Giddey. Because Josh Giddey is not that, you cannot, even at 22 years old, you cannot outbid yourself. Again, this is not saying that he doesn't deserve fair market value, but let the market set that, because the Bulls have shown themselves they're not a team that can evaluate what actual value is. They just can't. Either they can't. So that's something to look at for as well there, as a little aside. But as we're just continue going through this rebuilding, this thing, like, it's about finding the players that you can find an angle with and that you can build on. But this Bulls team is in the doldrums right now, right? We've lost the last 3 straight games by an average of 26.7 points. Over 25 points on average, we've lost the last few games by, right? And so when you look at it, like, at least we had leads against Minnesota and the Golden State Warriors. We never held the lead at all against the Pistons. The only time that the Pistons weren't in the lead was when it was 0-0. That's it, right? And so when that comes down to it, that's a concern, right? Now, Billy Donovan has made some comments after the game where he said this. Certainly, if you look at the younger guys, it would be their growth and development in terms of not only receiving minutes, but being responsible in their minutes, where they're developing a mentality of things that they've got to do to impact winning. That's critically important. The other part, and Lonzo hasn't been here, but I think he, Vooch, and even Coby, they've been around for a little bit. What kind of leadership can those older guys provide in the locker room in terms of not only necessarily holding guys accountable, but the attention to detail on things that we need to do. At this point in time, you want to have games that are meaningful. The urgency part is so important. If you look at good teams that are maybe fighting for home court or they're fighting for seeding, whatever it may be, every game is meaningful, and you're creating meaningful games. That's a great opportunity for guys to grow. Here's here's the good thing. Like, what Billy Donovan said is structurally right? But here's the thing. Billy Donovan, where's your part in providing leadership as the head coach? I get it, looking at your guys in Vooch, Coby, and Zoe, and having veterans around that could hold guys accountable. That is why you keep some veterans around on the team. That's why you gave an extension to Lonzo Ball. He is a guy that can provide that. But also, the coach has a place in this, right? And you say that you have to develop a mentality to do things that impact winning. Billy Donovan, where are you going to coach the team to impact winning? That doesn't mean that you are going to win every game. But did last night feel like a game that was coached by a head coach that was trying to win a basketball game? Did it feel like a game that was coached by a head coach that was trying to develop a mentality in players that you have to fight and compete? The thing that was most concerning about last night's game is Matas Buzelis was the first player to hit a bucket that was meaningful, and you pulled him. Then you put him back in the game, and then you played with some energy, and then you pulled him. He was your leading scorer last night and only played 19 minutes, whereas you had 5 other players play more minutes than him. But you want these young players to grow and develop. What else? And I get it. There are some people that look at Matas and they aren't enamored, right? And I'm not saying everything should be built around Matas Buzelis. But he played 19 minutes. He was 5 of 7 from the field. 5 of 7 from the field. Over 50%. 2 for 2 from three-point range. He only had 1 rebound, 1 assist, no block shots, but he had 12 points and led your team. But yet there were, 6 players that played more minutes than Matas Buzelis last night. What does that do to the young players' mentality, Billy Donovan? What does that do to the young players' mentality? And that is why, as much as Billy Donovan says some of the right things at times, he's a gaslighter. Because the actions very rarely fit what Billy Donovan is saying that this team wants to do. You say that you want young players to show fight and to impact winning and to do the right things and the mentality to develop. But why are 6 players playing more minutes than the player that led your team in scoring? That had one of the lowest minuses, because most players had a negative plus minus in this game, despite a few, that actually impacted that. Why, Billy Donovan? That is the thing that I look at, and I say that when I say Billy Donovan cannot possibly lead a rebuild, right? And when you take away players like DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, Billy Donovan's flaws in coaching gets more maximized and more exposed. Because Billy Donovan just is not the type of coach that actually, when you look at it, he doesn't have schemes. He doesn't have that. I hate to say this, right? Billy Donovan is not a good head. Like, he's an okay coach. But he's not a coach that you look at that's going to elevate anything. Billy Donovan does not draw up anything. He relies on his players, right? And their raw talent. And if you had a team full of stars, or at least 2 stars, or a superstar, a transcendent superstar, maybe that'll work a little bit better, right? But much like we saw for the team that we faced last night, they switched coaches, right? And that switching coaches, with most of the team staying the same, this team is night and day different because of the way that things are actually ran and operated. Now, yeah, they brought in more veterans, and Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr. Shout out to them there. But this Bulls team continues to slide, and when you look at the things that when winning isn't the focus anymore, right? And you're starting to look at development, you look at a coach differently. And Billy Donovan, with the team with DeMar, Vooch, and Zach, that was a veteran team that was fighting and competing, what is needed from a coach with that team to a coach that you have young guys as you're trying to figure out exactly who and what these players can be at the NBA level? Drastically different things are needed. And Billy Donovan is failing at that part of the game, at that part of the assessment every single day, in my humble opinion. Right? And so I doubt that they're going to move, because AK and Eversley absolutely love Billy Donovan. So I'm not going to be here and try to sell y'all a dream on, well, yeah, we're one step closer to Billy Donovan being removed as the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, because I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. I do not believe that that's going to be the case. I just don't. But they should. Just because they won't don't mean that they shouldn't, right? And so it comes down to this, is like, it's not all on Billy. It's not all on Billy. Billy isn't deciding 100% of the roster. But Billy does need to be one of the first casualties, I think, of us actually choosing and moving forth in a new direction. I just don't see a world in which you can do that and develop these guys meaningfully at the same time. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Billy Donovan shows something, because I do think he's going to see out the next year of his contract. Maybe he starts showing something different. Maybe with an offseason to prepare, of not having certain guys around, and prepare to be that coach that just is having just young guys that you got to figure out. Maybe he prepares a little bit differently. Maybe he leans on Dan Craig. Maybe he leans on Wes Unseld Jr. even more. Maybe that's the case to be there. But I'm tired of waiting on maybes. I'm ready to see a choice in a direction, and a choice in all right, Billy, thank you for what you've done. We decided to go in a different direction with it. Like, you don't even have to throw Billy under the bus. It's just simple as looking at Billy Donovan and say, all right, Billy, when we initially brought you in here as to be our head coach, you were the hottest name on the market. We really needed what you brought in, the leadership we thought you were going to bring to this team to help guide us into a phase that we wanted to compete. Now, unfortunately, we're going to a different phase. This next phase is going to take a lot longer. This is going to be a phase of development. This is going to be a phase of not winning a bunch of games. This is going to be a phase of where we have to lean on our rookies. And we got to bring in somebody who's kind of better aligned with that vision. And move on. Because when it comes down to it, Billy Donovan is not that guy. He's not that guy. So, that's my thought process on it. I know not everybody's going to agree with it, and that's fine. But I just look at it and I say it's more and more evident. Like I said, the rebuild will be televised, but Billy Donovan should not be part of it. That's just my part, my thought process. Now, the Bulls do have a game before we get out of here tonight against the Detroit Pistons, the same team that we faced off against last night. And I don't have any high-level analysis for you. It just comes down to, don't do the shit you did last night. Don't do that again. Like, it's just plain and simple there. Don't do that shit again. Don't do that shit. Don't come out here and have a repeat performance again. Could you imagine having back-to-back nights when you lose against the Detroit Pistons and I don't think you're going to see a game this bad at all, right? Let's get a competitive game there. Even if you do lose, can we at least get a competitive nature in this game? This is the last game that the Chicago Bulls have before the All-Star break. We won't see the Bulls again till next Wednesday. We won't see them again till next Wednesday. It's a week of no Bulls basketball, and some of us may need that week of not seeing this team. We get to see Matas in the dunk contest, of course, which could be fun. But we need a week of no Bulls basketball. I think that's needed at this point in time. We don't take the court again after tonight until the 20th against the New York Knicks. God damn it. So hopefully the Chicago Bulls come out with a better competitive edge tonight, and we just see it, man. But that's my thought process. You guys can let me know how you feel down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.